In a small, sun-baked clinic tucked between crumbling buildings in Lagos mainland, Mira Halden lay on a thin hospital mattress. The ceiling fan clicked above her, more noise than relief. Her forehead was damp with sweat, her body heavy as stone, and her skin burned under the fever's grip. With trembling fingers, she clutched her phone, speaking into it as though the words alone could carry her out of the room. "Hello. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice nearly a croak. "I've been preparing for this interview for weeks, but I'm very sick. I'm in the hospital. Please," a cold, clipped voice interrupted her. "Ma'am, if you're not here at your scheduled time, your application is void. Thank you." Click. Her arm dropped, the phone clattering to the floor. Mira blinked up at the cracked ceiling, tears slipping down her temples. "Please," she whispered, her voice now a breath. "Don't take this chance away. My daughter. She deserves more." In the far corner of the room sat Nova, her 5-year-old daughter, her feet swinging from a plastic chair. Her curly hair was pulled into tiny puffs, each tied with blue beads that clinked softly when she moved. Nova didn't speak. She didn't cry. She watched. Nova had seen her mother wake before dawn, lug buckets of water, clean homes that weren't hers, and walk miles under the scorching Lagos sun for scraps of money. She had seen her mother dream, and now watched her break. Something quiet yet determined stirred inside her. She didn't know what exactly she was going to do, but she knew she had to do something. Something bold, something brave, something her mother would never expect. In the silence of the hospital room, the seed of a miracle was planted by a child barely tall enough to reach the doorknob. The sky outside was the color of cool ash when Nova awoke. Mira was still sleeping, her face pale and lips dry, the fever refusing to loosen its grip. The IV bag swayed gently, ticking off seconds like a countdown. Quietly, Nova rose from the chair. She padded to her mother's bedside and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Mama," she whispered, "you need to rest now." Her small eyes turned to the worn brown leather bag beside the bed, the one her mother never let go of. Nova knew what was inside. Unzipping it carefully, she pulled out a stiff, clear folder. Inside it, the papers were pristine, a printed resume, recommendation letters, certificates. Things her mother held like treasure. Nova clutched it with both hands and tiptoed to the far corner where her belongings were folded in a faded supermarket bag. She pulled out her favorite outfit, a bright kitenge dress with pink and yellow flowers. Mira had sewn it by hand for her last birthday. Nova put it on, smoothed it down, and slipped her tiny feet into her best sandals. They were scuffed, but they still held strong. She walked to the door, folder in hand. At the entrance, she turned one last time. Mira hadn't moved. Nova's eyes softened, but she didn't hesitate. Outside, Lagos had come alive. Hawkers yelled out their morning deals. The scent of roasted corn and hot oil filled the air. Clutching the flyer she had taken from the fridge a week ago, the one with the picture of the shiny glass building and red-circled Bus 24, she waited at the roadside. When a rickety yellow Danfo finally screeched to a halt, she climbed in with the help of a kind woman. "Where to, small madam?" the woman asked. Nova sat tall. "To the building with the stars in the windows. My mama has a job there." The Danfo coughed away down the road as Nova stepped onto the polished pavement outside Ashford Maweba Holdings, one of Lagos Island's most gleaming skyscrapers. The glass caught the sun like water. Nova blinked up at it. She walked slowly toward the large sliding doors, past the security post, her kitenge dress fluttering with each step. Inside, the lobby buzzed with the footsteps of suits and heels. A woman with short braids and gold earrings sat at the front desk. Her name tag read, Zaria. Zaria was mid-keystroke when she noticed a small shadow at her desk. She looked up and paused. Standing before her was a little girl, barely taller than the desk itself, holding a folder almost half her size. "Hello, sweetheart," Zaria said gently. "Are you lost?" Nova shook her head. "I'm here for the interview." Zaria blinked. "Interview?" "Yes," Nova said. "My mama is too sick to come, so I came instead." She needs the job, really needs it. People nearby stopped, their curiosity piqued. Two security men moved closer, frowns creasing their faces, but Zaria waved them off. She turned back to Nova, her voice softer now. "What's your mama's name?" "Mira Halden," she replied. Zaria quickly searched her computer. Yes, Mira was scheduled for 9 a.m. She paused, then pressed a button on her earpiece. "Tell Mr. Adekunle to come down, now, no questions." She looked at Nova, her eyes shining. "You're very brave." Nova nodded, tightening her grip on the folder. In a world full of adults who didn't listen, her small voice was finally being heard. And somewhere on the top floor, a door was opening, not just to an office, but to something far greater. High above the Lagos skyline, on the 21st floor of Ashford Mweba Holdings, Eli Adekunle stood before a floor-to-ceiling window. Tall, dark-skinned, and meticulous in a cream-colored tailored suit, he sipped from a mug of black coffee. His reputation preceded him: brilliant, unsparing, emotionally distant. At 32, he had built a company people feared more than they loved. His phone buzzed. It was Zaria. "Sir, there's something you need to see downstairs." "Unusual, but important." He frowned. "I said no interruptions today." "Please, sir," she replied. "This is different." With a tight sigh, Eli straightened his tie and entered the elevator. The mirrored walls reflected a man who never missed a deal, never wasted time. But nothing could prepare him for what he saw when the doors opened. In the center of the sleek marble lobby, surrounded by curious eyes, stood a small girl in a bold kitenge dress, clutching a folder nearly half her height. She turned to face him, her posture unshaken. "Are you the boss?" she asked. Eli nodded. "I am." She stepped forward, hands trembling only slightly as she held out the folder. "This is my mama's. She was supposed to come today, but she's very sick, so I came instead." Silence fell like a stone. Eli stared at her. "Why would you do that?" Her chin lifted. "Because Mama deserves more than pain." The words pierced deeper than anything he'd heard in years. Eli looked down at the folder, then at Nova's solemn eyes. Without glancing at his assistant, he said firmly, "Cancel my next meeting." Zaria's eyes widened. "Sir, I won't repeat myself." Then to Nova he offered a small nod. "Come with me." Her tiny feet followed him down the hall. Something extraordinary had just begun. The conference room was like something out of a magazine. Glass walls, a 12-seat table, chrome light fixtures. Eli pulled out a chair for Nova. She climbed in with quiet dignity, her legs too short to reach the floor. He took his seat across from her and opened the folder. Her name wasn't on the papers, but her soul seemed to echo through every page. "Nova," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Tell me why your mother wants this job." Nova didn't rush. She sat still, hands folded over the edge of the table. "Mama works all the time," she began. "She sells food on the road. She cleans people's offices. She doesn't even sit to eat." Eli nodded slowly, watching her. "When her shoes have holes, she says, they're still good, but she buys me new ones instead." He glanced briefly at her small, white sandals, frayed but clean. Nova's voice softened. "She used to go to school. She told me she loved learning. But when I was born, she had to stop. She tells me at night she's tired of just surviving." Eli said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence itself was a kind of witness. Nova looked down for a moment, then added, "She wants to be seen, not as poor, but as smart." Eli sat back in his chair. No CV had ever spoken like this, but somehow this 5-year-old had delivered the most profound message he'd heard in years. When Zaria returned to escort Nova out, Eli remained seated, staring at the folder. The silence in the room wasn't awkward, it was reverent. This wasn't just about work anymore. It was about something much older, much deeper. Redemption. That afternoon, a delivery bike pulled up to the modest hospital. The rider, sweating under the Lagos sun, handed a small package to the nurse who brought it into Mira's room. She stirred, groggy from the fever, but alert enough to notice something unfamiliar: a vase of wildflowers, fresh and vibrant, sitting on her bedside table. Next to it was a small, cream-colored box and a handwritten note. Mira blinked, uncertain, her hands trembling as she reached for the card. The handwriting was neat, measured. To the strongest woman I've yet to meet. EA. Inside the box was a small pack of cold chocolate milk. Mira gasped. It was Nova's favorite. Her heart began to race. Her eyes shot around the room, suddenly realizing something. The small plastic chair where Nova had been sitting was empty. Panic flooded her chest. She grabbed her phone, dialed the company number from the flyer. Ashford Maweba Holdings. This is Zaria speaking. Mira's voice cracked. Please, this is Mira Halden. My daughter, she's only 5. She might have come to your office today with a folder. I'm so sorry. Zaria chuckled warmly. Miss Halden, your daughter is safe. In fact, she paused, she may have just earned you a second chance. Mira dropped the phone in her lap, stunned. The weight of sickness, fear, and years of quiet struggle seemed to lift. Hope, fragile but real, returned like breath after drowning. The very next morning, Mira stood outside the glass doors of Ashford Maweba. Her fever had broken, but her body was still weak. She wore a modest navy blouse, a faded skirt, and her hair pulled into a neat bun. Her shoes were scuffed but spotless. Nova held her hand tightly. You'll do great, Mama, she whispered. Mira smiled through misty eyes. Because of you, my love. Inside, Zaria greeted her with a warm nod. Miss Halden, Mr. Adekunle is expecting you. Mira followed her through quiet corridors. The closer they got to the office, the louder her heartbeat became. When the door opened, Eli stood by his desk not as the cold executive she feared, but as someone changed. Miss Halden, he said, extending his hand. I'm glad you're feeling better. Mira gripped his hand, surprised by how steady hers felt. Thank you, sir. Eli smiled slightly. Your daughter gave the most honest interview I've ever seen. Mira's cheeks flushed, and she looked down. Eli gestured to the chair. Now, he said, sitting opposite her, I'd like to hear it from you. Mira opened her folder. She spoke not with desperation, but with truth. She told him of her past, her education, her detour into survival. She didn't ask for pity. She simply showed her worth. And Eli, who had judged hundreds of candidates, found himself listening with more than just his ears. For the first time in a long while, he was listening with his heart. 1 week later, Mira Halden walked through the glass doors of Ashford Maweba Holdings as a junior associate. The title wasn't grand, but for her, it was a mountain moved. She walked past whispering interns and skeptical staff, heads turning to the woman with the child who had caused a stir in the lobby. Some smiled, some didn't, but Mira held her head high. She had earned her seat, and more importantly, she carried something bigger than judgment resolve. She came early, long before the office filled with hums and keyboards. She stayed late reading reports until her eyes burned. When she didn't understand, she asked. When she made mistakes, and she did, she apologized, corrected them, and didn't repeat them. Slowly, quietly, she built something few people noticed at first: credibility. One evening, as she finished a late-night report, a sandwich appeared quietly on her desk. No note, but she knew. Another morning, when she called in worried because Nova had a fever, a short message came from Eli. Family first, take your time. He didn't hover, he didn't overreach. He just supported. In that quiet space, Mira began to grow. Not just in her career, but in belief. Belief that she belonged. That she was not just surviving, but becoming. The company started to see her not as a pity project, but a pillar in the making. She never spoke of her struggle again. She didn't have to. Her work told the story, and in the background, behind every spreadsheet and late night, stood the tiny figure who once walked into a glass tower with nothing but hope and a folder. Every Friday, just after school, the glass tower of Ashford Maweba gained a new kind of sparkle Nova. She walked in with her small backpack, her coloring books, and a smile big enough to light up the entire lobby. The guards saluted her like she was royalty. Zaria kept her favorite apple juice chilled in the break room fridge. By now, Nova had her own spot in Eli's office. a soft pillow by the window, a low stool, and a small box of crayons labeled in gold marker. Little CEO. She drew animals, stars, and once scribbled a crown over Eli's face on his calendar photo. "You're the king of papers," she said proudly. Eli laughed. Not a smirk, a real laugh. It was the kind of sound no one at the company had ever heard from him before. Even the staff began to soften around her. She handed out stickers. She reminded the finance manager to drink water. She once scolded a senior developer for not eating lunch. "Mama says big people forget to rest." Without trying, Nova stitched herself into the soul of the company. To the outside world, it was odd a child trailing behind the company's most feared CEO. But to those inside, it was healing. Eli, once all edges and silence, had started keeping a photo of Nova on his desk. Mira, once invisible, now led team meetings with calm precision. And the three of them, though unspoken, had become something rare in Lagos's world of power plays and hard lines. They had become family, not in title, but in spirit. The Ashford Maweba end-of-year gala shimmered beneath strings of fairy lights. The hall sparkled with gold and emerald accents, the scent of jollof rice and suya drifting into the soft Lagos night. Mira stood near the Christmas tree in a flowing green dress, her natural hair pinned high, her smile full and open. Nova twirled nearby in silver shoes and a cream dress, spinning like a moon around the earth. From across the room, Eli watched, no business deal in hand, no phone call to interrupt, just watching. Later, someone tapped a glass. Attention turned as Eli stepped onto the small stage. "Normally," he said into the microphone, "I talk about numbers, growth, revenue. This year, I want to talk about a different kind of profit." He paused, scanning the room. A little girl walked into this building with a folder twice her size and a heart bigger than this tower. She spoke on behalf of someone who had almost been forgotten. And because of her, we gained not just a colleague, but a vision. He raised his glass. "To Mira Halden and to Nova, who believed in her before the rest of us did." Applause echoed like rainfall. Nova beamed, Mira's eyes blurred with tears. Later that night, in a quieter corner, Nova looked up at Eli. "Uncle Eli?" she asked. He leaned down. "Yes, little one?" Her voice was small, but serious. "Can I call you Baba now?" The room stilled, Mira freezing mid-step, but Eli knelt and gently touched Nova's shoulder. "It would be my honor." Mira's tears came not from pain, but peace. In a city of closed doors and rushing noise, her daughter had walked through one carrying not just papers, but truth. And because of that truth, a woman stood tall. A man found healing, and love found its way home. Quietly, powerfully, unforgettably. In Lagos, where horns honk louder than hearts, and chances slip through the cracks like rainwater in market stalls, a little girl taught them all. The bravest feet often wear the smallest shoes. And the strongest love? It doesn't shout, it simply shows up. What did you think of the weight of paper and hope? Did Nova's courage move you? Did Mira's journey inspire something in you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell us what part of the story touched you the most. If you believe in the quiet power of love, resilience, and second chances, share this story with someone who needs it. Like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful African stories that uplift and remind us sometimes the smallest hands carry the biggest dreams.